Paul, can we go back to things that we would like to see BP address on the preliminary scoping statement?
Sure.
We haven't talked about land use once, if and when there's a wind farm. We have never discussed land use and what would be allowed. There's a lot of people that use land here for recreational purposes. Maybe it's snowmobiling, maybe it's four-wheeling, maybe it's hunting, but there's a lot of people that have bought land specifically for that kind of activity. Some may have leases, some may not have leases, it doesn't really matter. We have friends that will let me go hunt on their land. They very, very well be leaseholders. Will the fact that there's a wind farm or a wind turbine on that specific land, will that affect the recreational use of that land? And if it will, I suggest that it be addressed. Will I still be allowed to hunt on my neighbor's land if they have a turbine? That is one of the questions.
So you want us to take a look at whether or not there'll be impacts to recreational
Yeah,
activities.
please make it known.
Are there anything in your current contracts that would prohibit other people from using the property?
In your current wind farm, do you prohibit anything like hunting, snowmobiling, four-wheeling? That's a question for today.
I don't have the answer right now.
Another issue I'm going to ask to be addressed is the environmental justice areas. How does BP normally handle those? How do they address that type of an issue? What do you plan to do along those lines?
Yeah, I think similar to the question asked before about whether or not there's policy on this kind of thing.
I'm sorry?
Similar to the question that was asked before, whether or not there's a policy for this. There's a policy, it's a case-by-case basis, but we certainly are aware of a potential EJ area in the project footprint, and we're trying to take steps now to develop a plan for conducting further outreach for that area.
Will those plans be made available to us, who may develop, us meaning Cape Hudson?
Well, look,
I go so far as to say, if you have, the whole notion of an EJ as it relates to wind farms is somewhat new. And for us, in terms of reaching out to the community, the environmental justice community, and making sure that we're involving them and getting the right information to people so they feel involved. One of our struggles is how best to do that with that community. And so I'd go so far as to say not only would we share it with you, but we welcome the input. If you said, listen, you should make this information available at this library because that's where people will be, or you should put it at the rec facility because that's where people will be, or you should put it online because people have access to the internet, or alternatively, they're not going to get it on the internet because they don't have access to computers. We need your help in helping making sure that our EJ outreach and ultimately how that EJ community is treated is appropriate.
I might suggest, if you take a look at your Exhibit 4, where you have the impact, it's going down principally to McKeever Road with some sections off that. So I don't think you're looking at a lot of people. You're only looking at maybe half a dozen people, at most families that would be impacted by that. And I would suggest the best thing to do is put together a package, and you've got a way in which you can identify them through the parcels and contact them directly, because you're only looking at half a dozen people. But it is rather difficult when you look at that map, that overlay that you have, for those people who even identify the McKeever Road, no less their own property and where the impacts and how far you so. So it would be very helpful if you provided them much more detail, and as I said, there are only a few residents there.
Would you be willing to consider stopping the practice of approaching organizations with donations? since it is such a touchy subject in this town, because we feel it's an ethical issue. And we've had obviously lots of problems, and with that in the past, we're still under a New York State Attorney General investigation. And here, now it looks like you're buying their support. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but that's what it looks like. Would you be willing to stop that protest
We'll
in this town?
take another advisor.
Any other thoughts, comments, observations?
Before the meeting, go ahead.
I have one, I had several, but they've all been surfaced, so this is good. There's quite a bit of surveying going on around town there. I'm sure you're aware of that. People are surveying for some reason at this point in time.
Yes.
Okay. I'm interested in, this mapping is a big deal, because where is this survey taking place? Is it taking place in the lake, the river districts, close to, again? What's going on?
We're surveying to better understand the project boundaries.
No, I understand that.
No,
So where are you surveying? Are you surveying in our restricted districts, excuse my voice?
we're surveying in areas of the project footprint that would support infrastructure. Maybe I don't understand.
You're familiar with our current zoning map.
I've seen the map as part of the zoning law, sure.
By looking at that, and this is part of why we talked about overlay map. Looking at that, it appears as if there are no turbines located in the riverfront district, the lake district, or the lake recreation district. Is that correct?
I don't recall offhand.
Well, that's the question, that's the point.
So which of the districts outlined in the zoning law are we conducting boundary survey work in? Is that the question?
Yes.
I really have to take a closer look at it. I've got to
Can you let
imagine
us
it's
know?
primarily agricultural.
Can you let us know, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Well, you get an indication by what was said by Mr. Harris, that perhaps even the limited industrial area might be a candidate. So those boundaries are not within they're not being excluded. They're not part of the equation, apparently.
Can we do an item of old business?
It says general discussion, I guess old business would probably fall into that.
In
so.
Mr. Chandler's letter, talking about what he'd like to discuss at this meeting, he mentioned meteorological tower. And that's what the status was. And shortly thereafter, I think it was one day after his letter was dated, I believe we sent a response stating that the Cape's position was meteorological towers, and we sent applications for special use permits. Can you update us on where that stands?
We're receiving your letter.